We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the Cash Flow Pro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of Cash Flow Pro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with Blake Schwanee of the Rooted Land Company, and we're going to talk about private money. We're going to talk about land. We're going to talk about everything that this man is apparently a master at. So Blake, why don't you take it over and tell us what and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a real estate investor and based in Texas, a small town in East Texas called Tyler, Texas. And I started investing when I lived in a bigger city. I was a bachelor, just looking to put down some roots, got my first property and house hacked that, had some buddies paying for that. And that's when I kind of caught the bug and started thinking, man, this is pretty cool. Somebody else paying for my properties. But I couldn't really scale in a big city. So I started looking at remote investing. And so I really kind of sharpened my teeth on remote BRRRR investing. And so I invested in a market about 4.5 hours away from Austin and started doing BRRRRs. And in 18 months, had a multi-million-dollar portfolio, self-made millionaire in 5 years, and just kind of scaling from there. So, left the W-2 world. And now I spend a lot of time growing my portfolio. I teach other people how to do it. And then I hang out with my wife and my baby boy. And he's about 3 months old. So we're getting some awesome morning snuggles right about now.
Yeah, man, that's what it's, and and there's so many people that miss out on that stuff because they're chasing the non-recharging dollar, if that makes sense. And so, man, the fact that you could figure out the power of cash flow and get all of that stuff. I'm sorry, I was pulling up your website here. Just wanted to I love those hay rolls, man. That's my kind of talk right there. So, no, the fact that people go through, and some people go through their whole life and never realize that money can essentially become the never ending charged battery, if you will, the infinite income is what some people call it. So anyway, but yeah, that's great. And again, spending time with your kids and family and raising your children and really your health and everything else ought to benefit too. So, well, how did you get started? I mean, obviously you just gave us the synopsis, but what, you house hacked the first deal. Where was that at? What was that?
That was in Austin, Texas. I bought it for $250. I put 5% down, and then it was a 4-bed, 2-bath. So I rented it out to 3 of my buddies at $600 a month. My mortgage was $1,747. And so I covered it. I was probably a little bit in the negative just from expenses and stuff like that. But I was also living in it and got to write literally everything off.
Yep.
Like I went from paying money in taxes to getting a big fat check at the end of the year. And so I did that, had my buddies live there. And then I did that again with another house about 1.5 years later. And that's when I started, I was talking to a buddy of mine he was also my agent, became a really good friend. And we were kind of brainstorming, thinking, well, if I house hacked one house every year for 15 years, put them all on a 15-year note, in 15 years, I'd be free. I just do a cash out refinance once a year. I walk away with, 80% of, whatever that is, $300,000. And for the life of me, I was like, I don't know what I would do with that money. Like that's just a stupid amount of money. And so I said, okay, my 15 years is the longest that it's going to take me to do this. Maybe I can push this thing up a little bit. And so I started looking at remote markets. I actually bought a property in Waco with a good friend of mine who, grew up in poverty and was just looking to try and get into a house so that she could take care of some essentially women getting out of really hard relationships.
Sure.
Provide a home for them. So I fronted the down payment. She lived in it and whatnot. And then with the goal of a few years later, refinancing out and her being able to own it. And so we just exited that probably about 1 year ago, and she owns that outright. But then at that point, I started looking like, how do I do this remotely? So I started out doing the kind of the DIY method, the school of hard knocks. I saved up $10,000 of stupid money just the tuition I knew I was going to pay.
Yeah.
My first contractor, and it was worth it to me, like it was worth what I knew I was going to end up getting and learning. And so my first contractor walked off with 12 grand. I didn't know how to manage contractors remotely. I didn't know what I was doing. But I ended up learning the process, learned it from somebody else. They taught me, and then just kind of scaled from there. I got access to some private money, someone who lent me $100,000 at, 10%, 10 and 1. And really just started kind of recycling that money. And then around, a few years later, recently, a year or two ago, Austin's market just went bonkers. And so I sold that house. We listed it at, I bought it for $250. I owed about $200 at the time. We listed it at $399 and closed at $497. And then I took that money and just put it all into turnkeys, 20% down, 20% down. Bought a 7-plex, a couple triplexes, a couple single families, and continued to do that. Did that with the other house, 1031 to that one, into a bunch of other properties. And yeah, so that's kind of what it's looked like. I met my wife about halfway through this journey. And so we started kind of planning what do we want life to look like and whatnot.
Sure.
So now we've settled down out here. It's actually been a really cool deal because part of our goal was we want to be able to be active in our community and kind of a presence for our community. So theoretically, we were thinking back then, we could say, well, what does our community need and how can we help? If we're the right people to actually do it, great. Most of the time we're not. At least we can get the right people in the room.
Yep.
But then we got out here. My wife's life dream was to open her own ballet studio for littles. And so littles ages like, youngsters, single digit, ages 2 to 10, basically.
Sure.
And so, we had the passive income, so we didn't have to rely on it as an income source. If it lost money, that's fine. And so we started this ballet studio, and it's for girls ages 2 to 10. And it's a for-profit business with a nonprofit motive. So the girls that can't afford it, they pay full market rate. And the girls that can't, we scholarship in with the proceeds from the girls that can. And it's been really cool. It's boutique. We've got the studio on our property. We have a detached garage. We live in a historic district. So we converted that into the dance studio, and man, it's been cool. In fact, we'll have, I don't know, 30 ballerinas here and later this afternoon, but it's a cool way for us to help serve the community in a really unique way that matches particularly my wife's giftings.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And then, like you said, a way to give back and make things where, leave more than we take, I guess. And that seems to be kind of the going adage right now with everybody's seems like a lot of people are trying to give back, especially from our business model.
Yeah.
And it's been so good to most of us that, hey, giving back a little bit is the least we could do. So, So when you talk about your investments right now, what's your major asset class? Like what's the first asset class that you are most interested in?
The bulk of my portfolio is single family. And then I have some small, medium multifamily.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm scaling into the medium multifamily, looking at like 20 to 40 units at a time.
Okay.
But my approach was, I said, well, I could go straight into, say, large multifamily. The risk exposure is a lot higher. The reward is a lot higher too. I'm a more conservative person and grew up in my dad's a Dave Ramsey guy, or at least at the time was a Dave Ramsey guy, like no debt, none of that. And so I was hesitant to take on too much because of the risk exposure. If I do a job 10% wrong on a $10 million, asset, as opposed to 10% wrong on a $100,000 property, like one's going to bankrupt me. The other one is just a gut punch, so
that's right.
So I started there and kind of scaled from there. But I love single family because they're so liquid. Like if I needed to get rid of one for some reason, let's say we had some medical expense or whatever, I just liquidate it. I can sell it in 60 days.
Yeah. Right? You're basically always 60 days away from your money.
Yeah. So I love the liquidity, but there's some natural overhead that, one close, one unit, as opposed to, right now I'm closed on an 8-plex that I'm going to burr. And that there's just some efficiencies there. But yeah, that's the breakdown. I'd say, I don't know, 60% of the portfolio is single family. The rest is, anywhere from 3 to
any short-term rental stuff.
No, long-term rentals primarily. I've looked at getting into short-term rentals. My approach is start with something that is a lot more predictable. Maybe there's less opportunity as far as cash flow goes, but it's a lot more predictable. And then the other piece is I want to spend a very small amount of my time on it. So with my portfolio, with the things that are already set up, I spend probably about 30 minutes a month on it. Now, if I'm acquiring more stuff, great. But short-term rentals, I would have to put a lot more time and effort into it up front. And call me lazy, call me whatever. Like, I don't really want to do it, you know? So we are probably going to use some short-term rental strategies for, you know, we're looking at buying a lake house and a beach house and stuff like that. Let the short-term rental stuff kind of pay for itself.
Well, that's what my wife and I are doing right now. We're building a lake house and we're gonna short-term rental it, you know, 90% of the time, and the other 10% of the time we want to take some friends down there. If I want to entertain a client or do something like that, that sounds weird, entertaining a client, but if I want to take somebody or show them around or whatever and let them stay down there or something like that, it's the same deal. But short-term rental.
That's what we would be looking to do, but doing it specifically like just for cash flow or just for income and stuff like that, we haven't gotten into that. And I think that goes back to my, you know, the natural conservatism that I feel and employ. I'm always growing and taking more risks and bigger risks, and you know, some things in my business that I'm doing that I think are healthy for me to say that's scary. I'm going to do it, so that it's a method of building courage, so I can teach my boy, you know, how to be brave and things like that. But so for this, you know, I'm saying build a foundation, and then, you know, if I want to hop over to short-term rentals or do something that's, you know, maybe even, you know, buy into it. And I'm right now, one of the opportunities I'm looking at is buying into an Amazon fulfillment service where I just pay money and I literally don't do, I don't know, but maybe 30 minutes or an hour of work a month. And the cash flow comes in and they manage everything. Like, I don't have to do it. Those are the types of things that are most attractive to me. But I do really like the idea of being able to get somebody else to pay for and pay off my lake house or my mountain house or whatever. So that's kind of our next step. So you'll have to let me know how yours goes.
I definitely will. It seems like, you know, all of the neighboring properties that do that in our area seem to be doing really, really well. And I think one of the things that really differentiates like good short-term rental properties versus properties that are just kind of when it comes to the income part of it is a water feature. A water feature. It's like I bet there's a 60% difference in the income, but there's also a higher price for the purchase. And ours is lakefront. Like you walk at the end of our property and the lake is right.
You fall in.
So that was it. Now the lot was I was actually called crazy by one of the neighbors for what I paid for the lot. But there was a lot of things that went along with it that really made it an enticing deal as far as what we were going to do. So there's a lot of things, but you've got to know some of those nuances. And that's one of the things about, you know, single family, anything, you have to know the nuances of the market, because if you don't know the nuances of the market, you can get burned really quick. But like you said, if you're 10% of your whole portfolio and you're out $100,000, stings, hurts. But ultimate financial death, no. You know, comebackable. You lose $1 million, $2 million. And all of a sudden your ass is, you're searching for something more than you really wanted. So with that being said, geographically speaking, are you pretty much everything in Texas?
Yeah, I focus on Abilene, Texas. I've got a few here in Tyler, Texas, just because when I moved here, my wife bought this house. I used a conventional loan to, house hack a house until we moved into this one. So we've got those two. And then our lake house will be on a lake here about 25 minutes away, reasonable price point, nice lake. It hasn't quite hit, the expansion of the Dallas demand hasn't quite hit this point yet. We're about 2 hours east of Dallas. But yeah, everything else is in Tyler. But my approach is, and I'm interested to hear what yours is, but mine is focus on one market and create a team that's so seamless that I can move really quickly instead of trying, and you get some economies of scale, right? Property management, once you got multiple doors, you drop from 10 to 9 all the way to, we're at 6, I think right now, 6%. Yeah. So I like to streamline within a single market instead of, just finding good deals in disparate markets, like one in Huntsville, one in Cleveland, you know?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is, and a lot of people. So where we live here in a little town called Hopkinsville, Kentucky, um, you can buy a house for like 25 grand, right?
Hmm.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds awesome. Like,
Yeah.
who wouldn't want to buy a house for 25 grand? You mean to tell me this house rents for 595 and it's 25 grand? Well, the problem is, and I had to work through this myself when I was younger. In my younger days, I'm ambitious now. I was far more ambitious then for work that was not really scalable. I
Hmm.
didn't know better, right? So when you really start looking at those things and you're like, oh my gosh, $25,000 for a house sounds great, but you also have 30%, 35% overhead expenses because it needs so many repairs, or it needs this, or it needs that, or it's built right on the ground. And now you're dealing with floor rot, and you're dealing with some stuff that just doesn't really scale out the way you want it.
Hmm.
And so you're exactly right. But somebody comes here from Chicago or somebody comes here from Atlanta, they think, oh my gosh, 25 grand for a house? Are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
serious? And so you have to know what's a good deal and what's not. And in order to do that, in my opinion, you have to know the market. You have to know the market. You have to know the demographics. You have to know the median incomes. You have to know the stuff that's going on there, and then you have to actually get out and talk to the people. Like,
Hmm.
all of that stuff, and that's all stuff by the book. But exactly what you're saying, you focus and hyper focus on one area, those deals will start to happen no matter what you do. They'll start to
Hmm.
come, they'll start to happen. Then, if you can figure out a way to scale into multifamily in that market. Now, where's your eightplex at? Is it in Abilene too?
Yeah. Yeah. They're all in Abilene.
What if you don't mind, will you tell us what the eightplex per door, what the
Yeah.
cost
So
was?
I'm buying it at 275, seller financing with 15 down at 3%, which is awesome. It needs to be rehabbed, right? So it's going to cost just south of 100 grand to rehab.
Okay.
His future ARV will be around 540, and it'll rent for between 8 and 850 a door. And so it should cash flow bottom line around between 22 and 2400 bucks a month.
You don't need a partner, do you?
I don't, not on this one, I got
Man,
I
I'm
got a
good.
couple other deals that might be attractive
Oh, I
for
want
partners
that
though.
one. I want that one. I don't want those other ones. I want that one.
Yeah, no, this
Uh,
one was brought to me by my property manager. She
sure.
had of course, any conversation I finish with, I'm usually asking, do you know anybody that has a property, and what can I do for you? Like, is there any way that I can help you?
Yeah.
And she said, well, I've got this other property or this other property that I manage, and the owner owns it outright, and it just needs so much work, and they had contractors in there, and then the contractors, skipped out on them, and so it's all vacant except for one. One is still being rented. She just wants to get rid of it, and so
Yeah.
we negotiated back and forth, and I was like, perfect. We'll do this financing. I've actually got with the volatility of the rates, I negotiated a 12-month extension on our term. So if we get to the end of 12 months and rates aren't really where I want it, I can leave it at 3%. I just pay another 10 grand down on principal,
Yeah.
and it extends
Man,
another
you
12
can't beat
months.
that. You're risk free because you're going to make
Yeah.
$2,400 a month between.
Yeah.
but you're going to be out the repairs if
Yeah.
something exploded and didn't work. I mean, there's a little risk there. Don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like those risks are fairly mitigated when it comes time to when the
Yeah.
rubber meets the road, and you're
Well,
like,
one of the things that I love about, when I talk about risk and I hear people say like, oh, that's too risky. One of the things I love about real estate is you can actually quantify your risk. Risk is a function of two things: the likelihood it goes wrong and the cost of it going wrong. Right. So it's just like hopping on an airplane, that if it goes wrong, you're screwed. Like, it's
that's
not
right.
going well for you, but the likelihood of it going wrong, why do people still get on planes? The likelihood's like 1 in 11 million or something like that.
Yeah. Risk v reward.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm saying, well, what's the likelihood that what is it going to cost if it really, really goes wrong?
Yep.
Right. And then I can put a number to that.
Yep.
And then I can put a number to other things as well. And then I say, is it worth my downside for the potential of my upside?
That's right. Quantifiable risk. And
Yeah.
quantifiable risk, that's a lot of that's a lot of times what the human mind, as far as like the majority of people, have a hard time. Like everything I look at, I quantify in some
Hmm.
form or fashion. There's like and that's what I always tell people about when we're going through real estate contracts, like on purchase contracts or sale contracts, things like that. Because I'm a real estate agent by trade. Real estate sales is my full background, basically my
Hmm.
whole career centered around that. And I always tell people, listen, we're going to see some terms that I can't necessarily quantify into what you're going to be looking at
Right.
in dollars, but you have to understand that some of these terms you need to somehow figure out how to match these terms with dollars, if you will,
Hmm.
to make it less risky for you and make it
Right.
more rewarding for you at the same time. So it's risk v reward in my opinion, but
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people look at. But you're right. Is the potential loss of what you put in greater, like, versus what the potential reward is? What
Yeah.
is How do
Can you
those
can you
match?
stomach the loss for the potential of maybe the reward? Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think
And
a lot of
generally,
times when I talk to people that are highly analytical, I'm thinking like engineering types. My background's in engineering, or like doctors, people that are highly analytical, maybe some finance individuals. They say they struggle with analysis paralysis, right?
that's
They
right.
struggle with analysis paralysis, which is really like the analytical person's way of saying I'm scared, but
Yep.
it makes us feel a little bit better, right?
Yep.
But really, they haven't figured out the skill of putting numbers to things. It
That's
doesn't have to
right.
be exact. Just it's about $50,000. That's
Well,
about what is. Yeah.
yeah, they're used to looking at defined
Yeah.
numbers that actually have a meaning behind them. There's something quantifiable on the other side of the physical number. And
Hmm.
sometimes when we're looking at this stuff, you're not quantifying what the market might, you can't
Right.
quantify what the market might be in 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, 24
Right.
months, 5 years. You can't quantify that. You can make a projection and say, I think we're going to be, our max negative is here, our max positive is here, but
Hmm.
our ultra max negative could be way the hell down there too. And
Yeah.
then you're looking at.
Well,
So
and
I know that. Go
people get
ahead.
really scared of asking what if questions. What if
All
this
right.
happens? What if that happens? If
Yep.
they would just answer that question, it'd make their life so much easier.
Yep.
Like if you say, well, what if your hot water heater breaks or the roof goes out? Well, how much is that going to cost? Perfect. Now you got an answer to it. You're out. What is it? $8,500, whatever it might be. Then can you stomach the deal? Great. Perfect.
Yep.
If you just
And
put a
that's,
number to it, it doesn't loom as large in your mind.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons everybody has taken a look at, for instance,
Mm.
tillable farm ground to grow wheat, corn, soybeans on has exponentially gone up. It's gone up 1,000 in our area. It's gone up $1,000 an acre per year
Wow.
since, say, like '07, right? Or, well, no, say since '08. And I'm just using this rounding figure. It's probably more like it could be probably even more like 800 an acre.
Mm.
So when you look at that and you're like, okay, these guys were dumping, millions into, like, they were going out and buying millions in farm ground. What was the risk really?
Hmm.
This is like the basis for my risk analysis. What was the risk? There really wasn't any, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to tell you why, Blake, because the bottom line is the world has to eat.
Yeah.
There's no way around. It's one of the main necessities of life, right? So
Yeah.
the
Food and
main
shelter.
correct, food and shelter and water, I guess, if water, food and shelter. And the bottom line is we've got a set number of, in other words, we've got land is Bitcoin for that matter, right? It's a
Hmm.
set number of acres, right? With an increasing capacity of use
Hmm.
because the population is growing every year. So the same number of farm acres are trying to feed a growing population. Which way is it going to go? No
Right.
risk. You might
Right.
have some short-term risk, but in other words, you don't have any risk at all.
Right.
And
You're,
it's the same.
buying farmland like that and even property, you're essentially betting on the American economy.
Yep.
Right. If you have the doomsdayers, they're like, well, what if, everything implodes and, well, your stocks are gone too. Like
Well,
We're
in
all
my
done.
opinion, even root it further, you're betting on the reproductive capabilities of the human population.
Which historically would be in your favor.
I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I think there was only 1 year where it was like less than 4 or 5% growth, and that was
Yeah.
back in like 1903 or something. And so, that's why I say, man, when you start picking this stuff and you start looking at your analysis for rental properties and you start trying to put some type of quantification on your risk, you have to look at all types of different factors. Farmland just is for me, that's the basis. That's me saying, okay, this is the basis of risk versus investment. Now everything
Mm-hmm.
else real estate wise goes up from here in risk.
Yeah, I read something the other day that I want to say it was Bill Gates. Bill Gates owns the most farmland in the United States of anybody.
Yep.
Right.
Hey,
he's not an idiot.
And I'll tell you the other thing, since we're on the farm ground talk, is kind of this is kind of like my world, because I've got an agricultural economics degree coupled with this whatever real estate knowledge that I have in my brain that seems to always be rattling around up there. The land and gold trail one another. Okay. But when you've got a lot of money, what the hell do you do with the money, right? You don't put it you put it in the bank, obviously, but how much of that bank, how much of that is hedged, right? 500,000, I think, something like that. They're only guaranteeing you the first 500,000 is protected. And then from there, what do you buy? All right, well, you have gold. Well, what the hell do you do with a truckload of gold? If you've got $25 million that you've got in cash, what do? You buy real estate. And if you want the lowest risk, most guaranteed return, because farmland is going to rent no matter what. It's going to rent to somebody. It's basically, the risk is all gone there. So land and gold, and land is your main pick for me anyway.
Yeah. It's fixed. It's not growing. There's not more of it. It's exactly what we got now is what we're going to have later. You know?
And I used to call my dad crazy because he would always say, land is the only thing they're not making more of. And I was like, not that that's a cry. I got the idea, but I'm like, Dad, there's a lot of damn land in Kansas that ain't nobody living on and ain't nobody doing anything with. But when you really start analyzing it and saying, okay, how much productive land is there? Like land you can actually do something with, that is very, very limited resource.
Yeah. And I think it's shrinking. Like I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma. Across the street from us used to be a big old field, big old wheat field.
Yep.
And then on the other side of that was a big old soybean field. What are those now? One is a neighborhood development and the other one's like a Walmart, Lowe's, and a Reese's.
So there you go. And there's also this thought, call me crazy, because I am sometimes crazy, but if there is a chance that the environmentalists have gotten at least something correct about global warming, and I'm not saying it is or isn't, I'm not getting into a political argument with anybody. I'm not even going to discuss politics. But what I'm saying is, if there is that chance, how much are we going to lose? Because, and I'll tell you, I say this because Florida alone has more cattle per acre than Texas. And that's a fact.
Wow. That's impressive.
Florida has more cattle per acre than Texas. And so what I'm getting at is sea levels rise, farmland goes in, people are moving, people have to move from there out. How much of that resource, you're right, it's shrinking at a certain percentage now, but if for some reason, that's why it's not worth having the discussion from a political standpoint of saying, oh my God, these people are morons, ice caps aren't melting. It's a what if.
Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the Cashflow Pro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 must-know keys to success in passive real estate investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making Cashflow Pro part of your day. Now, back to the show.
Okay. I'm going to, there again, like you and I discussed, I'm going to step back. I'm going to judge my risk, and I'm going to say, what if they are right? What if there's a 51% chance they're right, 49% chance they're not?
Then maybe you should buy some farmland in Canada or in, Montana, or just buy a bunch of, you know what I mean? Like if they're right, and, Texas and Louisiana is going to have 125-degree days, like maybe I should go buy some land in Montana or Idaho or something like that.
Productive.
Right.
That's it has to be productive. And I'll tell you, just because I know there's questions out there right now, but Florida's grass, the amount of grass that they have is what lends them to be able to have more cattle per acre than Texas. Now that was also a stat that was probably 10 years ago, but I assume it's probably still much the same because there hasn't been a lot. But anyway, so Blake, well, listen, man, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been kind of an interesting discussion. You never know the way these things may take turns and in and out and so on. And I guess, but I'd like to kind of end the episode. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. And the first of those is, what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading? And I can tell you're just such an analytical guy, like everything. So I assume we're probably going to get, I'm curious to know, really.
Yeah. I consider Rich Dad Poor Dad to be the Bible of personal finance.
First time we've ever heard that on the show, Blake.
Yeah. So that's my favorite one. But I think the one that I was telling someone the other day, that a book that changed my life is Living Forward by Michael Hyatt.
Interesting.
It essentially, it teaches you how to make a life plan. A lot of leadership books say you need to have a life plan, but you don't want to do that wrong and end up a clown or, whatever. And so the first third of it is the importance of it. The second third is how do you actually do it practically and tangibly? And then the last part is how do you execute on it? Yep. And between the second and third part, they say, hey, within the next 2 weeks, carve out a full day, 8 hours to actually build this thing. And starting to actually think through, what do I want my life to look like? That was what started my journey. I said, I wanted something different. I want to be free with my time and whatnot. So I still read that pretty consistently, and would recommend it to anybody that I was trying to help encourage to grow.
Yeah, man, that's great. And I got to say that I know the audience. There's probably a good bit of them out there that are somewhat, I don't want to say jealous, but probably envious of where you are in life and what the kind of the path that you've chosen. And, and if they're going to be mad at somebody for not being where you are, they can be mad at themselves. And that's the same for me. I'm none better. I'm none better than being sometimes not very, not very, I'd like to be more with my time than I am my money, but no, man, there's a lot of people out there that are hopeful that they can get to where you are. And unfortunately, some of us, and notice I'm saying us, our kids are going to grow up too fast, and we're still going to be in this whirlwind mixer, what a blender of life. Yeah. So anyway, but all right. So next question: what is a dream vacation that you have taken or hope to take?
Man, COVID kind of broke this for us a little bit, but we plan on spending a month over in Italy and France. And so we got a 3-month-old. One of the, you might think, well, that means you can't travel, but we're just going to bring them with us. Yeah. We want them to experience different cultures and stuff like that. And so we'll probably either bring my mother-in-law or my sister or someone like that to watch our baby boy.
The only thing I would not do with a 3-year-old in that scenario is, and I was just there. What is this? I was just there about 4 months ago. Is Rome.
Ooh, yeah.
I would not even remotely entertain the thought. I wouldn't take my 15. I'd probably take my 14, not 15. I'm trying to rush him along with, or actually no, 13. Damn, he's still 13. He's just now of the age where I would consider it, but man, it's tough. I took 58,000 steps in like 4 days.
Yeah.
And it's just brutal.
Yeah. I went up there I spent a little bit of time up there working with some refugees up there. If you're looking at the Coliseum and you turn around, there's actually a park where all the refugees sleep. And we spent a lot of time there with them, helping try to find resources and stuff like that they need. But man, yeah, it's all walking. I mean, you don't drive anywhere. Their infrastructure for like subways and stuff like that is way more consumable than it really is here in the States. But yeah, you're walking a lot. And if I got a 3-month-old, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, whatever, I'm probably gonna have to carry him half the time. You know what I mean? So unless I'm doing leg day twice a day, then I probably don't want to do that.
It was just far more than I was prepared for myself. And I mean, we went to Florence, and we went up into the, up to I remember where it was, up to the top where you overlook the city and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was so much walking. But that's awesome, man. Yeah. I love that part of the country. And, and I'll tell you, you said you had an engineering background, and I was really shocked at the number of college classes that actually leave the US and go over there for engineering stuff. I guess a lot of their stuff was just, it's like 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, however many years old.
Yeah.
So, I was shocked at how much of that went on over there.
Oh yeah. It's weird. The concept of age, when you're in the States, you see something 200 years old, 300 years old.
Yep.
I was in Israel at one point.
Blown out of the water.
Oh, it's wild. I was in Israel at one point, and they started digging to build a McDonald's, and they found a city underground. And we toured the city, and they told us how they found it. And it's just comical. It's thousands of years old. It just, just wild.
Yeah. And you're looking at this stuff, and the crazy part is like when you're walking through some of that like the Forum in Rome down by the Colosseum and stuff, and they're like, they start talking about the different kings and stuff that were there. And you're like, you find those little mosaic pieces off of a mosaic and stuff like that. And it's like, man, this could have been on a picture that I'm going to say King Tut, I don't know, looked at or was in his room or slept next to or anything. Yeah. It's just crazy to me. But anyway, so awesome. Blake, listen, how can a listener, if they heard something, if maybe you don't want people to reach out to you because you're more of a private investor and you do some of this stuff, but what is a good way for people to get in touch with you if you do want them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, BlakeChoisenet.com. That last name is CHOISNET. Or if you're interested in learning about the BRRRR method and just want to kind of be in a community with other people, I've got a Facebook group called BRRRR Investing for Rookies. You're welcome to join that as well. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn. You're welcome to follow me or message me there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. I know I hate to take away from family time to do things like this, but man, it's great to have you on here, and I hope that we left something here that the listeners can learn from, especially from your kind of dialed in single family strategy, because I don't think we don't get a lot of single family talk on this show. We get a lot of multifamily, a lot of self-storage talk, but we don't get a lot of single family. Simply because of scalability. And I think but it seems to me like you've really got it dialed in and are working on it. So, all right. And I want to remind the listeners to head down and smash that subscribe button, please. And also leave us a review so that others can see what you liked and loved about the Cash Flow Pro podcast. And again, Blake, thank you so much, sir. And listeners, thank you for listening. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day.
Cash Flow Pro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.